For years she controlled who got a table and who didn't. But when the people she dismissed turned out to be the restaurant's owners, she found herself on the other side of the door. Amanda had been working at Linden & Company, an upscale restaurant in the heart of Beverly Hills, for nearly a decade. She had mastered the art of curating the right atmosphere. The regulars were wealthy, well-connected, and in her eyes, refined. She prided herself on maintaining that standard, screening customers with an unspoken set of rules only she seemed to enforce. It wasn't about the dress code, it wasn't about reservations. It was about knowing who belonged. That afternoon, the restaurant had a quiet lull between the lunch and dinner rush. A few tables were occupied. Executives with loosened ties, women in designer dresses sipping their third round of wine, murmuring about their next vacation. Everything felt controlled, predictable, just the way Amanda liked it. Then the door opened. She looked up, instinctively scanning the new arrivals. A black couple, impeccably dressed, stepped inside. The man wore a tailored suit, the woman a flowing silk blouse. They carried themselves with an effortless grace, but Amanda barely noticed. She was already forming an opinion. Something about them felt off. And then she saw the two children. A boy, maybe 14, adjusting his tie like it was his first time wearing one, and a girl around 10, clutching a small handbag that looked expensive but unfamiliar. Amanda's lips pressed into a thin line. She had seen it before. The occasional table of black guests who wandered in, usually brought along by someone who fit. Maybe a business partner, maybe a celebrity acquaintance. But this, a whole family, just walking in on their own. She straightened her posture, a hand resting on the hostess stand. They stopped near the entrance, scanning the room with ease, like they had been there before. Like they belonged. Amanda cleared her throat, forcing a tight smile. "Can I help you?" The man smiled back, polite but assured. "Yes, we'd like a table for 4. Amanda didn't hesitate. "I'm sorry, we're fully booked." But something in his face didn't shift the way she expected. He didn't frown or glance at his wife in disappointment. He simply nodded, as if considering her words carefully. "That's strange," he said, looking around. "There are plenty of empty tables." Amanda's grip on the stand tightened. That wasn't the answer she wanted. But she wasn't about to back down. The man's words hung in the air, a quiet challenge wrapped in polite curiosity. Amanda knew this type, the kind who wouldn't just take no for an answer. She tilted her head slightly, forcing another smile. "Unfortunately, we're holding those tables for reservations." It was a lie. The family wasn't stupid. The wife glanced around again, her lips pressing together, but she didn't say anything. The children stood quietly, the girl adjusting the strap of her handbag, the boy shifting his weight. They were waiting for their father's reaction. He exhaled through his nose, calm, measured. "All right," he said, voice smooth. "We'll wait." Amanda didn't even blink. "I'm afraid there won't be any openings tonight." A pause. The wife glanced at her husband. The boy looked at his mother, then back at Amanda. The man gave a small nod, as if he had expected this. "In that case, I'd like to speak with the manager." Amanda's smile faltered. "The manager?" Oh, so he was one of those. The kind who thought asking for a manager would change anything. It wouldn't. The general manager, Paul, was barely around, and when he was, he trusted Amanda's judgment. Her tone turned crisp. "The manager isn't available right now." The wife sighed through her nose, shifting her handbag from one arm to the other. The children stayed quiet. The boy's jaw tensed, the girl looking up at her father, waiting. The man, however, didn't react. No anger, no frustration, just patience. Amanda hated it. "I see," he finally said. "Then we'll be leaving." He turned slightly, signaling for his family to follow. Amanda almost relaxed, almost. But then the wife spoke. "You sure you don't want to call your manager?" Her voice was even, but there was something in it. A test. Amanda scoffed, shifting her weight. "I'm sure." The woman smiled, small but knowing. "All right." They turned and walked toward the exit. The boy didn't look back. The girl did. Just once, before following her family out the door. And for Amanda, that should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Amanda exhaled, shaking off whatever strange tension had settled in the air. She had done her job. The restaurant maintained its exclusivity, just as it should. But then, something unexpected happened. The glass doors hadn't even fully shut when Paul, the general manager, burst out from the back office. His usual sluggish demeanor was gone. He moved fast, eyes darting around the dining area before locking onto Amanda. His expression was tight, almost panicked. "Where are they?" he demanded. Amanda frowned, caught off guard. "Who?" Paul's voice dropped to a near whisper, but it wasn't calm. It was laced with something she had never heard from him before. Dread. "The family that just walked in. Where are they?" Amanda blinked. "They left." Paul's face went white. He ran a hand through his thinning hair, muttering something under his breath before spinning toward the door. "Damn it." He yanked it open so fast that the host stand wobbled. Amanda stared, something uneasy curling in her chest. Since when did Paul care this much about a group of walk-ins? A few customers turned to watch as Paul rushed outside. Through the glass, Amanda saw him scanning the sidewalk, his posture stiff. Seconds later he spotted them. The man was speaking to his wife, hand resting lightly on her back as they walked. Paul shouted something, and the man stopped. Even from inside, Amanda could see the shift in Paul's body language, the tension in his shoulders, the urgency in his movements. He was apologizing. Amanda's stomach flipped. The wife turned slightly, expression unreadable. The son stood stiffly beside her. The daughter, the youngest, held onto her father's sleeve, her small fingers clutching the fabric as she looked at Paul. Then the man, the same man Amanda had dismissed moments ago, nodded once and followed Paul back inside. The wife hesitated before stepping forward. The children followed. And just like that, they were back. Amanda felt something ice-cold trickle down her spine. She was about to learn why. Out. The atmosphere inside the restaurant shifted the moment they stepped back in. Conversations softened. Forks clinked against plates. A waiter near the bar stood a little straighter, sensing something was off. Amanda, still stationed behind the hostess stand, swallowed hard. Paul walked beside the man, his demeanor almost too careful. His usual gruff confidence had vanished, replaced by something bordering on fear. The man's posture, however, remained the same. Calm, composed. He wasn't gloating. He wasn't angry. But there was something in his measured steps that commanded attention. Amanda cleared her throat, forcing out a laugh. "Paul, what's going on?" Paul ignored her, didn't even look her way. Instead, he gestured toward the best table in the restaurant, a private booth near the floor-to-ceiling windows, the one reserved for VIPs. "Please, Mr. Bennett, right this way." Amanda froze. Bennett. The name hit her like a slap. She had read about the Bennetts. Everyone had. Leon Bennett was one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the country, a billionaire who built his empire from nothing. He owned multiple businesses, luxury brands, and, Amanda's stomach twisted, the entire Linden & Company restaurant chain. This wasn't just some wealthy family trying their luck at an exclusive restaurant. They owned the restaurant. Amanda's mouth went dry. Leon Bennett's wife, Camille, slid into the booth with effortless grace. Their son followed, sitting stiffly beside his mother. The daughter, the one Amanda had barely looked at earlier, climbed into the seat and rested her chin on her hands, watching. Leon sat last, calm, unbothered, in control. Paul wiped a thin sheen of sweat from his forehead. "Mr. Bennett, I am so—" Leon lifted a hand, not rudely, just enough to make Paul stop. The billionaire exhaled, then, finally, turned his gaze to Amanda. "What's your name?" Amanda's breath hitched. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. Paul cut in quickly, voice frantic. "This is Amanda. One of our—" "I'm asking her." Amanda's stomach twisted. She forced a swallow. "Amanda," she said, barely above a whisper. Leon studied her. Not cruelly, not angrily. Just studied. Finally, he spoke. "Tell me, Amanda, what exactly made you turn my family away?" The weight of the question crushed the air from her lungs. Paul flinched. A table nearby fell silent. Amanda could feel the stares now, creeping in from the corners of the restaurant. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Because what could she say? That they didn't look like they belonged. That she had decided, in a fraction of a second, that they weren't the right kind of people for this place. That her definition of exclusivity had nothing to do with reservations or fine dining, but with something far uglier. She couldn't say any of that, so she said nothing. The silence stretched, the weight of it suffocating. And then Leon leaned back. His expression remained unreadable, but his voice, sharp as glass. We invest in excellence, service, quality, and most importantly, people. Amanda's chest tightened. Clearly we need to rethink who represents our brand. The words landed like a hammer. Amanda felt the floor beneath her shift, her balance suddenly uncertain. She had spent years controlling the space around her, deciding who got in and who didn't. And now, she was the one being evaluated. For the first time in her career, she was the one who didn't belong. But it wasn't over yet, because Leon Bennett wasn't done. The weight of Leon Bennett's words hung in the air, pressing down on Amanda like an unbearable force. Paul swallowed hard, his eyes darting between Leon and Amanda, but he didn't dare speak. Nobody did. The restaurant had fallen into an eerie silence. The other employees kept their heads down, pretending to be busy, but Amanda knew. They were all listening. Her mouth went dry. She should apologize. She should say something, anything to fix this. But before she could open her mouth, Leon's wife, Camille, spoke. Is this how you treat all your guests, Amanda? Her tone wasn't raised, wasn't aggressive. It was worse. Measured, controlled, disappointed. Amanda felt the blood drain from her face. No, But Camille wasn't looking for an excuse. She turned her attention to Paul. Tell me, Paul, she said, resting a manicured hand on the table. Is this the level of service Linden & Company is known for? Paul looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. His hands trembled as he clasped them together, his face shifting between panic and forced diplomacy. Absolutely not, Mrs. Bennett. This was a terrible misunderstanding. Leon's gaze didn't waver. Was it? Amanda's chest tightened. Paul hesitated. I can assure you, Mr. Bennett, Amanda has always been one of our best employees. This was just bias, Leon interrupted. Paul flinched. Amanda couldn't breathe. Leon tapped a finger against the table. She didn't think we belonged here. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a decision she made the second we walked in. The words burned, because he was right. Amanda's stomach twisted in a way she had never felt before. Camille glanced at her husband before reaching for the menu, flipping it open as if this conversation was already decided. I assume our meals will be covered, Paul. Paul nodded so fast it looked painful. Of course, Mrs. Bennett, absolutely. On the house. Leon leaned forward slightly, his dark eyes piercing through Amanda. And Amanda. Her breath caught. You can take the rest of the day off. Amanda's heart plummeted. It wasn't a firing, not officially, but the message was clear. Her shift was over. She opened her mouth, desperate to say something, anything. But Leon's expression made it clear. This conversation was finished. Her legs felt shaky as she took a slow step back. Paul still wouldn't look at her. The other employees stole quick, guilty glances, but nobody came to her defense, because they knew. And as Amanda turned, humiliated and hollow, she realized something. She had spent years controlling who got to stay. But now, she was the one being shown the door. Amanda stepped out into the cool evening air, her mind racing. The streets of Beverly Hills, usually polished and bright, felt different now. For years she had walked past these storefronts, carrying herself with a quiet authority, a belief that she understood this world. Now, she felt small. Her fingers trembled as she reached for her phone, but she had no one to call. What would she even say? That she had been sent home, not because of a mistake, but because of a choice she had made. The worst part was, she knew this wasn't some misunderstanding. She had spent years justifying the way she screened people, who she welcomed, who she discouraged. It was never outright, never something that could be pointed to in a policy handbook. But it had been there. quietly shaping every decision she made. And now, she was paying for it. She thought about Leon Bennett, how he had stayed calm, controlled, how he hadn't needed to yell or make a scene to prove a point. His presence alone had been enough. And Camille? She had barely raised her voice, but Amanda would never forget the look in her eyes, the quiet understanding of exactly what had happened, and exactly why. Amanda swallowed hard, blinking against the sharp sting of humiliation. A part of her wanted to rage against it, to convince herself that she was the victim, that she was just following some unspoken rule of exclusivity. But deep down, she knew the truth. She had been wrong, and there was no undoing it. At that moment, the restaurant doors swung open again. Amanda turned quickly, heart pounding. Paul stepped out, rubbing the back of his neck. His usual air of authority was gone, replaced by something she hadn't seen before. Shame, he sighed. Amanda, I don't know what's going to happen. But Mr. Bennett, he exhaled sharply, shaking his head. He's making calls. Amanda's chest tightened. Is he firing me? Her voice was barely a whisper. Paul hesitated. Then, I don't know. Silence stretched between them. Then Paul muttered, I told you to be careful. Amanda flinched. Not because he was scolding her, but because she had ignored every red flag. Paul gave her one last glance before stepping back inside. Amanda stood frozen, realizing her entire world had just changed. And the worst part? She had done it to herself. Life has a way of teaching lessons when we least expect them. Amanda thought she was in control, but in reality, her choices controlled her. We don't always get second chances to make things right, and sometimes the consequences of a single moment can last a lifetime. What we do when no one is watching matters, because eventually, someone always is. What do you think should have happened to Amanda? Should she be fired? Given a second chance? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe in treating people with fairness and respect, hit that subscribe button. Because the real measure of character isn't in what we say, but in how we act.